What's up, Bombshells? Welcome to Bombshell 1111 Podcast, Therapy for Women of Color. My name is Kia, and I'm your host. Generally, podcasts request donations, but I want you to show love by simply subscribing to my social media platforms by visiting my website at www.bombshell1111podcast.com. I want to see thousands of subscribers on this platform. Leave your comments and I'll show love by shouting you out on my social media platforms such as Instagram and Facebook. I want to thank you for your continued support as always. And with that being said, let's jump into this new episode.
Hey y'all, my name is Kira and I'm here to drop some bombs with Bombshell 1111.
Welcome back, Bombshells, and I'm Kia. I'm your host. And tonight you guys will be discussing we got to start over because I messed up. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey y'all, my name is Kira and I'm here to drop some bombs with Bombshell 1111.
Welcome back, Bombshells. I'm Kia and I'm your host. And tonight we'll be discussing eating disorders with our special guest, Kira. So without further ado, Bombshells, let's jump right in. Welcome, Kira. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this discussion and conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to have you on. This is a topic that is not discussed a lot, specifically within our culture, the African American culture. So I was really excited to see that this is something that you were very knowledgeable of, and you're going to be, talking about this tonight. And then also it'll be beneficial not only to just, the African American culture, but to other cultures and other, diversities as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
So let's just
down below, there's going to be a short description
of who you are, what you do, and all that stuff. But I generally like the guests to come on and do a short description of who they are, what they do, and how long they've been doing it, that type of thing. So without further ado, give us a short description of who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Absolutely. So I am on the East Coast here in Maryland. I own a private practice called Pearl Wellness Practice with a business partner of mine who is a registered dietitian, and I'm a licensed therapist. So it's great. We kind of have that duo of having a registered dietitian and then a therapist for eating disorder care. I've been in eating disorder work for about 7 years, from internship all working at different levels of care, which I hope to kind of dive into a little bit more about different levels of care later. And then decided to open up kind of my own practice over the last year. And outside of owning a practice and seeing clients, I do mentor psychology students. I sit on the board as the chair-elect for the International Association for Eating Disorder Providers for the DC metro area. I also am a supervisor for provisionally licensed therapist in the DC metro area as well.
Oh my God, that's so dope. Congratulations on all those endeavors. Oh my gosh, that is so dope.
Thank you.
Yes. Eating disorders, I've always had some type of passion for it, and mainly because in my past, I had a family member that dealt with that specifically, and always wanted to just learn more about it. I too tried to get internships within that particular field, but it was just really hard in the area where I lived at to find, a facility that specialized in that. So again, I'm so excited to hear the things that you're about to share with us here tonight. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Can you give us the clinical definition, or in your expertise, the definition of what an eating disorder is, Kira?
Absolutely. So, eating disorders are behavioral conditions characterized by severe and persistent disturbances, and eating behavior is often associated with distressing thoughts and emotions. They can be very serious conditions affecting the physical, psychological, and social functioning for an individual. There's many types of eating disorders, which include, but are not limited to, anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, other specified rumination disorder, and then ARFID, which is also known as avoidant restrictive food intake disorder.
And what are the is there like a root cause for an eating disorder, or is there any what is the cause for an eating disorder?
There are multiple influences and factors. They can range from biological, psychological, social. I would say some of the biological parts of that can be, a personal history of dieting, as well as other weight manipulation methods, having, high parental demands, having a close member that also has suffered with eating disorder. The psychological piece of it can be body image dissatisfaction, perfectionism, history of some type of abuse, socially, diet culture, weight stigma, teasing and bullying. I mean, there's a variety of different things, and not one thing can, be the kind of etiology of that.
And so before the podcast here tonight, I sent over a couple of truths about eating disorders that kind of stands out to me. And I wanted to kind of just see, out of those three, the two that stood out to you the most. And I'll just go over the three for those who that are not here present to be able to see. The first truth is many people with eating disorders look healthy, yet maybe extremely ill. The truth two, families are not to blame and can be the patients' and providers' best allies in treatment. Truth three, full recovery from an eating disorder is possible. Early detection and intervention are important. So from those three truths, what two about eating disorders stand out to you, Kira?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones is that, families are not to blame, just kind of as I went through previously, all the different factors that can influence the development of an eating disorder. A lot of times, families, especially if they bring in their child for care, do kind of take on that blame or, guilt. And, maybe there is some verbiage language that we want to work with parents or their guardian or whoever they're living with on ways to talk about, themselves and about food choices and things like that. But that's not to say to blame. It's more rather that, the educational piece and building a health environment for everyone involved.
So when it comes to having a discussion with a loved one or a friend about an eating disorder, what types of questions or what question is most appropriate to ask someone to help identify an eating disorder?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna flip script a little bit and start with what not to say. I think a lot of times is that, maybe one of the more noticeable things that someone may see is weight loss, a drop in weight, or maybe a weight increase. And that can actually be damaging to point that out first, because with eating disorders, if there is some weight manipulation going on, the eating disorder can kind of take that as like a praise and then want to thrive off of that. So you really want to stick away from more of anything like physical that you're noticing in terms of weight, but rather asking, or if there's any observations you've made of like, oh, I noticed that you ate maybe a little bit less today. How are you feeling? I noticed that kind of is happening over the last couple of dinners. I'm noticing that you're getting up later and not eating breakfast before going to school or work or, whatever it may be. So kind of rather asking about the behaviors that you're noticing and not necessarily anything physical.
So so we talked about intervention as far as like, intervening, trying to get to the root of it, trying to see if the eating disorder is something that is actually going on. And then after we get past that point, and that is the thing that is such going on, we move into treatment. There are many different forms of treatment, but I specifically want to ask you a question in reference to how does one determine whether a client, a patient, a loved one, or a friend requires inpatient or outpatient treatment? Can you explain the difference between the both?
Yeah, there's several levels of care for eating disorder treatment. One being outpatient, and that outpatient level of care is when an individual, lives at home and attends weekly sessions with providers, whether those providers be a therapist, a dietitian, maybe they have a psychiatrist, and they're medically stable to be at that outpatient level, engaging in their daily functionings. And then there's that intensive outpatient level, which is also known as IOP, and that is typically more of like a treatment center, maybe is virtually done, but you have a little bit more support. Maybe you're engaging in groups with other clients. You have a whole treatment team in-house, such as a dietitian, psychiatrist, therapist, other providers. And then from that level, there's also partial hospitalization, which is still more of like a day type treatment, but more hours throughout the day, where it could be 7 to 9 hours, up to 5, 6, 7 days a week. And then there's that residential treatment, which is 24-hour care, and that's where a lot of times there's multiple therapy sessions, multiple sessions with a dietitian. There's more groups. You have 24-hour care of nursing staff. And then there's two other higher levels of care, which is inpatient. And then that is for when someone is maybe not medically stable, or maybe there's some psychiatric component of like risk of harm to self. They need more monitoring. And then there's acute medical stabilization, and that's the highest level of care for individuals with eating disorders. This level is critical care, and that's for people who are medically unstable due to the severity of their eating disorder. And it usually focuses on more on the physical stabilization of the patient, and then kind of the maintaining of that. Then they can kind of drop down to more of a program that is going to focus on the behaviors and the thoughts and emotions.
Okay, so Kira, now that we've talked a bit about eating disorders, what to look for, and in addition to treatments, let's talk about specifically what you do in order to assist individuals who are dealing with eating disorders specifically. What types of services do you provide, or what do you do in order to assist people that are dealing with this specific issue?
Yeah, so I do direct outpatient care, so I will see clients on a weekly or bi-weekly basis that are in a place that they can be at outpatient. And that could be someone who maybe is just now recognizing, okay, maybe I have an unhealthy relationship with food and body that I need to kind of explore. Do I need to step up? Or it could be someone who has had treatment and they're kind of stepping out of a program and need to just kind of have that maintenance of care. As well as doing direct care, I also, like I mentioned in my bio, I do consultations for other providers for eating disorder and kind of bring awareness of what to look for as mental health providers. That could be signs of, okay, maybe this person needs to see a specialized eating disorder therapist, or they need to step up to a higher level of care. I would say that's kind of the two ways that I work within the eating disorder population.
Okay, and then do you provide services only in person or online, or both?
Yeah, so I'm completely virtual. And with that, it's been really helpful to have virtual, because then I'm able to see, individuals. So I'm licensed in Florida, Maryland, and DC. And so I'm able to kind of see clients in other states, or if they're traveling to one of those states or districts, I can see them and be able to kind of be that support. If we've been working on something, maybe they're going to Florida for a summer vacation, and we've been working on body image and food choices that, are going to be best for them in their treatment. And so having that virtual care, I'm able to do that. Another thing with virtual care is that for some clients, grocery shopping can be very difficult. And so there'll be times that, as long as the client agrees to me being on video with them for HIPAA reasons, I'll kind of walk with them through the grocery virtually to kind of help them with any anxiety or thoughts that are coming up. So virtual care has been really beneficial in this work.
And so, Kira, with your services, is there a particular disorder
more so one than another,
or is you specialize in all things eating disorder?
I would say I specialize in, many of the eating disorders. The one that is a little bit more difficult is that avoidant restrictive, which is also known as ARFID. And the reason being is that there's a lot more that goes into that in terms of like exposures and more meal type treatment. And so a lot of times I'll bring in a registered dietitian just regardless when I'm working with eating disorders, but I do like to leave that to just people that maybe have in person or can do more of that meal support and exposure therapy with a client.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. So, Kira, is there anything you feel that I missed that you'd like to share with the listening audience?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that, eating disorders can affect people of every age, race, size, gender identity, sexual orientation, and background. Within the U.S., about 9% of individuals suffer from an eating disorder, which that percentage accounts for about 28.8% of Americans. And another thing, as I was talking about disorders at the beginning and that they are very severe, is that they have the highest mortality rate secondary to opioid use. Research has shown that someone dies from an eating disorder every 50 minutes, so it is very serious. But I think a lot of times can often, because it's maybe not always something that is detectable and noticeable, because sometimes a lot of behaviors are done in secrecy, or maybe they just are not as noticeable, or not kind of seen as often. And so definitely can kind of go under the radar unless addressed.
Wow. Yes. Thank you so much for that. And so, Kira, for the listening audience, how can they get connected to you for services, or even just to follow you to stay up to date on what you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website called porowellnesspractice.com. You can find myself and my business partner, Eden Davis, the registered dietitian, on there. We have a resource page where we have resources for clients themselves, but also resources for loved ones. I also have an Instagram, which is Poro Wellness Practice. And then in the new year, I'll be launching a body image workbook that has kind of some stuff there with what the work that I do.
Well, Kira, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge and tools with the listening audience. And I wish you the best on all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
And thank you as well. So you guys, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks to Kira for joining. We hope that you were able to hear something that was beneficial to you. And with that being said, thanks. Remember, you are a bomb within your own shell. Peace, love, and light, you guys. Until next time, good night. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate, review, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some valuable information that can help you on your personal journey. Also, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Bombshell 1111 or at Bombshell 1111 TV. You can also check out our mental health page, Your Health is Your Wealth, on Facebook, which is a page created to inform and support individuals with mental health and other health conditions. And with that being said, always remember, you guys, you are a bomb within your own shell. And until next time, peace, love, and light.